the luxury villa where my marriage went to die. I have spent the last 12 years building a real estate empire, stone by stone, in the heart of San Francisco. I am the woman people call when they want a glass-walled penthouse or a historic Victorian with a view of the bridge. I am efficient. I am sharp. And I am, quite frankly, very, very rich. My husband, Julian, is, well, he's an artist. Or at least, that's what he tells the people at the gallery openings. I pay for him to attend. He's a conceptual photographer, which is a fancy way of saying he spends most of his time in his studio, which is actually just a very expensive climate-controlled basement in the house I bought. We were sitting in our kitchen, sipping $20 lattes, when Julian dropped the bomb. He didn't look up from his iPad. He just said it, as if he were checking the weather. So Marcus is getting married in Tuscany next month. I'm going to need Chloe to come with me as my date. I actually stopped breathing for a second. Chloe, my best friend. My soul sister since college. The woman who has been living rent-free in my guest house for the last 3 years because her wellness blog didn't quite take off. I'm sorry, I said, my voice dangerously level. Did you just say you're taking my best friend to your brother's wedding in Italy? Julian finally looked at me, and he had that look. That exhausted look he gives me when I'm being too corporate. Elena, don't make this a thing. It's Marcus. You know how he is. He's marrying into that old money tech royalty family. They're all very aesthetic, very ethereal. And I'm not aesthetic enough? I asked. Julian sighed, long and dramatic. You're a shark, Elena. You're all power suits and spreadsheets and efficiency. My family thinks I married a poet. I told them you were a travel writer who's always away on assignment. If you show up talking about closing costs and market volatility, it ruins the vibe. Chloe? She fits. She's soft. She's inspiring. I felt a cold, sharp blade of reality twist in my gut. It wasn't just about the vibe. Julian had been ashamed of me for a decade. He was ashamed of the very money that bought the clothes on his back and the camera lenses he used to take pictures of nothingness. And Chloe? My best friend had already said yes. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my latte. I just nodded. 1 week, I said. You and Chloe in a villa in Tuscany pretending to be the happy couple while I stay here and work. Exactly, Julian said, looking relieved. It's just for the brand, Elena, to keep the peace with Marcus. I'll make it up to you, I promise. Oh, I whispered, a smile touching my lips for the first time. I'm sure you will. The moment they left for the airport, the very second the Uber pulled out of the driveway, I went to work. I wasn't just a realtor. I was a fixer. And I was about to fix the biggest mistake of my life. I picked up my phone and called the one person Julian hated more than anyone in the world, his cousin Silas. Silas was the black sheep of the family because he had the audacity to actually be successful. He was a venture capitalist who lived in London, and he had spent the last 10 years being mocked by Julian's artsy family for being shallow and money-obsessed. Silas, I said when he picked up, how would you like to attend Marcus's wedding with the most powerful woman in San Francisco? There was a long pause, then a low, smooth chuckle. Elena, I thought you'd never ask. We spent the next 4 days orchestrating the most expensive, most beautiful, and most brutal surprise in the history of the Italian countryside. I flew into Florence 2 days after Julian and Chloe arrived. Silas met me at the airport in a vintage Alfa Romeo. He looked like a movie star, and he smelled like cedarwood and old money. Are you ready for this? He asked, as we sped through the rolling hills. Silas, I said, checking my reflection. I have been ready for 12 years. The wedding was being held at a private villa that cost more per night than Julian had earned in his entire life. When we arrived, the party was already in full swing. Long tables, white linen, flickering candles. It was the vibe, and there they were. Julian was holding a glass of Prosecco, looking poetic in a linen suit I had tailored for him. Chloe was draped over his arm, wearing a silk dress that looked suspiciously like the one I'd bought for our anniversary last year. They were laughing. They were glowing. They were quite literally playing house, on my dime. Silas took my hand, and we walked toward them. The crowd began to part. When you have a certain amount of presence, people move. Julian saw me first. His glass didn't just slip. It shattered on the stone floor. Chloe froze, her hand still resting on his bicep. Julian choked out, What are you doing here? I decided I needed a vacation, darling, I said, my voice carrying perfectly over the music. And since I was paying for the villa anyway, I thought I'd come and enjoy the view. The wedding guests, the old money tech royalty, all turned to look. Julian's brother Marcus stepped forward, looking confused. Julian? I thought you said your wife was in Bali on assignment. I turned to Marcus and gave him my most dazzling $1 million smile. Oh, Marcus. Julian has such a vivid imagination. That's the artist in him. He's always making things up. I looked at Chloe. She was trying to shrink, trying to disappear into the shadows. Chloe, honey, I said, stepping closer. You look lovely. Is that my vintage Versace? I thought I'd lost that in the move. It looks okay on you. A bit tight in the bust, but we can't all be the same size, can we? The silence in the garden was absolute. You could hear the crickets, and you could hear the sound of Julian's ego imploding. Elena, let's go inside, Julian hissed, reaching for my arm. I didn't move, but Silas did. He stepped between us, his height and his tailored suit, making Julian look like a terrified schoolboy. Careful, cousin, Silas said, his voice like silk. You wouldn't want to make a scene at your brother's wedding. It would ruin the vibe. I looked around at the aesthetic crowd. I have an announcement to make, I said, projecting to the back of the garden. Since Julian is so fond of honesty, I thought I should clarify a few things. Julian isn't a conceptual photographer. He's a husband in residence. I am the one who pays for the cameras. I am the one who pays for the galleries. And I am the one who is currently divorcing him. Julian's face went from white to a sickly shade of gray. Elena, stop, please. Oh, I'm not done, I said. Chloe, you remember that wellness blog I funded? The one where you write about living your truth? Well, your truth is currently being evicted. Your things will be on the curb by Monday. I've already contacted the property manager. I turned back to Julian. And Julian? The credit card you used to buy those plane tickets? And the villa? And that suit? I canceled it 20 minutes ago. The hotel manager is actually on his way out here right now to discuss the balance. As if on cue, a man in a dark suit appeared at the edge of the patio, looking very concerned. Julian, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper so only he could hear. You wanted a travel writer? Well, here's a story for you. It's called The Man Who Had Everything, and traded it for a vibe. I turned on my heel, my silk skirt swishing against the stone. Silas took my arm, and we began to walk back toward the Alfa Romeo. Elena! Julian screamed. You can't do this! You can't just leave us here! We have no money! We're in Italy! I stopped. I didn't look back. Well, I called out over my shoulder. I hear the scenery is very inspiring. Maybe you can take some pictures of it. For your art. We got into the car and Silas started the engine. The roar of the Italian motor was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. Where to now? Silas asked, a smirk playing on his lips. London, I said, leaning back into the leather seat. I hear the market there is very volatile, and I'm in the mood to close some deals. As we drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. I saw Julian and Chloe standing in the middle of that beautiful, expensive, aesthetic garden, looking smaller and more pathetic than I ever thought possible. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel angry. I felt efficient. I had spent 12 years building a life for a man who didn't deserve it. And in one night under the Tuscan moon, I had finally moved on. And let me tell you, the view from here, it's stunning.